Walter Wonkite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. It's education and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. We are live. Yes, we are live here for sure. And we are at lifestyleradio.net. I'm your host, Al Graham. And as usual, as I said, we are live. Tonight on the program, I have Northern Ontario Kim Cooper joining me as my joint host. And her guest tonight is a person who loves to write and educate people about cannabis. But before we meet our guest, it's time for Kim and I to have a quick chat about the latest in news. Well, Kim, how are you today? You must have let everybody know what's going on.
Oh, Kim's not well. Kim is battling the flu, and I also had some more dental surgery today. So yesterday. So my mouth is extremely sore, not too talkative tonight, but we'll get through the show. As they say, the show must go on, and I am here.
Yes, that's a song by Queen, Freddie Mercury. The show must go on. That's right. It's a good song. I really like that song.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and you know what tonight is, Kim?
What is tonight, Al?
Tonight is a special night. Tonight is our 100th episode here at Lifestyle Radio.
Oh, fantastic. I wasn't aware of that. Oh, that's great. Congratulations to all involved, Al, Rapp, yourself, Alicia, past hosts and everything that's made this possible, Debbie Stahl-Skiffen. I mean, all our guests, of course. I mean, what a great achievement, 100 shows for Lifestyle.
Yeah, it's I had to keep something quiet. I had to surprise you.
Yeah, tough to do. I've tried to stay on top of a lot of stuff, but you got that one by me.
Yep, 100th episode here. So, I thought a bit of a milestone there. I'm going to mention it to you. So.
Oh, excellent.
All right. Now, in our news, we got a bit of something that we touched on earlier in our reefer reports that we had done that was released here earlier this week. And that has to do with a friend of the community, and that's Sam.
Yes, Mr. Sam Malachi, dear friend of the community, just recently received his degree and became a doctor of naturopathic medicine. He developed a lot of tinctures and other, medicinal means of using cannabinoid therapy for medicinal reasons. He saved a lot of lives. And now he's in great distress himself. Sam had a heart attack, or actually a stroke, en route to one of his book signings just over a week ago, and is now in hospital recuperating.
Yes, yeah, that's one of those, things that nobody even suspects coming.
Yeah, you don't see it coming.
You don't see it coming. No. It's very unfortunate. Whenever this happens to anybody, and we wish him well and a good quick recovery.
Absolutely. I know that they're looking forward to welcoming people that know Sam well, that Sam would be able to recognize and know through his life in general, whether they be past patients, present patients, or strong friends in the community. I think something is trying to be gotten together for people to reach out and find out how and where they can go to visit Sam. Look for information on my social media pages in the coming days for information on how to do that.
Yeah, I believe that they're posting some announcement on his book page.
Yes, that's right. Mike's taking care of it on the book page on the site that they were doing the book tour with, and it's also being updated on Sam's homepage on Facebook.
Okay, all right. So that's where you can go and get some more information on Sam, see what's going on.
Yeah.
All right. Now, also in our news tonight, we've got, we heard Justin Trudeau talk about cannabis legalization. There was that date concern there. Some people said July 1st. He's saying sometime this summer. And now the health minister has revealed that, yeah, okay, it can go past through the Senate in May or June, but they are going to allow the companies up to 90 days to get set up after it passes.
Yeah, and they're saying it could take a wait of up to 8 to 12 weeks after the legislation is passed before officially lifting the 95-year-old prohibition.
Yeah. That's so you're looking at 3 months. 3 months. Yeah. 90 days. If you're thinking that this summer I'm going to be able to grow 4 plants out in my backyard, maybe not. Unless you're going to start them in September.
Yeah. But now some municipalities are also on the flip side speaking out saying, well, you know what, July 1st, we're ready. So let's do this. So, I mean, who's to say what it's going to come down to? It may be varying dates depending on where you live. We'll have to see how this plays out.
Well, another point, too, is that the government has always said that, even if you don't have a store near you, you're going to be able to get it when legalization happens because you can pick up the phone and order it and have it mailed to you.
So will that be also subject to the 8 to 12 week wait that provinces are going to have to wait, or will the feds be ready to go day of passing of legislation?
Yeah.
These are all unanswered questions at this time, right?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how all that folds out. Maybe we'll get our opinions from our guests tonight.
Yes, it would be interesting to get an input from a professor on this situation.
Sure would be. So let's bring our guests into the program then.
Absolutely.
Okay, the guest today is a person who I described loves to write and educate people about cannabis. I'd like to welcome Professor Judith Stamps to the Pace Radio Show. Hello, Judith. How are you?
Oh, fine, thank you.
And how is the West Coast?
The West Coast is mellow as usual.
It is.
Compared to the rest of the country.
Okay.
Weather-wise and otherwise as well.
Well, I can tell you, it just seems as soon as you get one snow pile cleaned up, another one arrives.
Yeah.
Where you are, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
This has been a year, like around here, we've actually had quite a few years where the snow has been low. So this year is a makeup for some of those past years, I'll tell you.
That's for sure. We're getting hard. But the West Coast has had things pretty easy on the weather front as well as on the cannabis front lately with the latest announcements out there, eh?
Yeah. Our province is one in which our premier and his cohort in the Green Party took the initiative to approach the federal government and said, look, BC has a very big underground industry, thriving, isn't full of gangs. We want to bring it into the regulatory system. We want a way for these people to come into the light, and that's one of the reasons that we have these new micro-grower possibilities, because BC really stepped up and bargained for it.
Yeah, that's one thing like BC does is you guys get together and you step up more so there than in any other province in this country, I think.
I'm not sure if we still had Christy Clark, for example. I'm not sure if she would have done that. I really don't know where she stood on that.
Yeah.
And certainly no more conservative government would have. But anyway, we're happy to have the coalition that we've got, because they were from day one promising that not only would they lobby to make sure that the growers in BC would be able to be licensed in some way, but they also lobbied and they also made the decision themselves that people who want a retail license do not have to worry about having had a conviction for possession or something like that in the past.
That's what
their only rule is that you can't belong to the Hells Angels or something like that.
Right, so they're going to override the feds on this then?
No, they're talking about retail.
Okay.
They're talking about opening, because it's their responsibility to figure out what to do about retail. So if you want to open a shop in BC, they will review your criminal record, but it's not going to be a detriment to you in any way unless you've been shown to be a gang member of some kind. You can open up a shop. The production licenses, that's a different thing. That's a federal thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah. One's provincial, the other one's
versus fed.
federal.
Okay, all right. That's how you get around that because I was confused about that. So thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying that.
Yeah,
I'm
so
sure
we
a lot
have
of other people are
jurisdiction.
confused.
And not only that, but it seems to me that the province needs to go even further and actually try to get some control over local production, maybe by issuing their own kinds of licenses. I mean, we're not there yet, but I think ultimately that's what we would like.
So
Because,
now is the
in other
province-
areas, the federal government is not in direct control over wine producers in BC or tobacco
Right.
growers somewhere or, other coffee growers or whatever. There's no other industry in which they have direct control like that.
Right, right. And that's what I was going to ask. So in BC, the province doesn't have control over craft growers then, do you? Can they issue license to craft growers or does that come from the feds?
That comes from the feds.
That's
Although
what I
the feds
thought.
have said they are issuing, they are starting to work on application forms for craft growers, that there's going to be a craft grower category. But their rules for entering that category are much stricter.
Right, right. That's where
Yeah.
you get into no criminal record and many that have been in the industry for a long time will become excluded on that basis. Other provinces are climbing on board with that same sort of, mentality and taking on that mentality as the federal government is, such as Ontario, and restricting those with criminal backgrounds. Do you see there being big issues with this in the future?
I see big issues with Ontario. If we want to make, say, a contrast between New Brunswick, which has also got a very strict system, and Ontario. Now, New Brunswick never really had a cannabis culture to speak of,
Right.
compared to
Yeah.
BC and Ontario, for example. They didn't have a huge, thriving underground, culture. So when they announced that they're going to have strictly public stores, LCB stores and such, for them, I think that's a boon because it's progress in that province.
Right.
Ontario's had a thriving underground and has thriving dispensaries. Trying to extinguish that is just a non-starter as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand why Kathleen Wynne even went in that direction. She seems liberal in other areas.
Yeah, I would have thought a more progressive thing to allow the the community to be involved in it.
So she plans to open 80 stores to start with and 150. What on earth
40,
is she going to
40, isn't it 40 stores?
to start with? Well, what does she think? That's a huge province with a huge population. I don't know what she's thinking.
For example, where I live, for me, the nearest store is a 3.5-hour drive minimum.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm an hour.
3.5.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
Well,
Northern Ontario has one.
Now, how that in no way it will allow them to achieve their goal, and even if when they get the maximum stores that they're talking about, the 120, whatever it is, that still won't be enough. Like that, that's when the dispensaries were in Toronto. That was the number for the dispensaries.
Yeah.
No, there are something like 650 liquor stores in Ontario, and that doesn't count just the beer and wine stores.
That's
so
right,
I have no idea where they're getting these numbers from. It just boggles me that they don't simply bring the dispensaries in the way BC has. They don't plan. They don't plan to build enough stores.
It's doomed to fail, in my opinion. Like, there's no way that this can succeed.
And I think that trying to stamp out a very vibrant, active, constructive industry is just not going to fly.
No. Well, was it like a $6 billion industry? They're just trying to swat down like whack-a-mole?
Yep.
And it won't be effective.
Why not just license existing establishments, such as small vapor lounges, stuff like that are in and amongst various areas of the provinces, including small communities. License them to start distributing product.
And, for rural areas like yours, for example, is there a liquor store close by you?
No. Well, in the community I'm in now, yes. But in the one that I just moved from, I'm usually in the middle of nowhere, and I've lived all over the north in the last several years, moving around for work. And most communities, the liquor store or beer is available in the corner store, which is the gas station and the post office.
Right. So
I'm not far from one of those.
I heard John Horgan saying that, in some small rural communities, they might have to make some sort of bending of the rules to make it possible for people to access it. So I can't see why in your community you can't have the combination gas station, beer store, and a little bit of cannabis, maybe just a jar of pre-rolls on the counter.
Yeah.
Something
available. Something.
Now, will this will the plan in BC will it having these retail outlets as far as supplying them? Will this be required for them to go through the licensed producers, or will they be able to set up contracts with the micro growers?
They're not going to be setting up. Yeah, they can set up contracts, but what BC has said, and they have not said it in a way that's very clear to anybody, but the LCB is going to be the main warehouser of all cannabis. Now, I don't know, and nobody knows, whether they actually mean to build a physical warehouse or whether they mean that there's going to be some sort of electronic tracking method by which everything basically goes through them in a kind of electronic way but not a physical way. Yeah. I know that the BC Independent Cannabis Association, which is the main lobby group here, or one of them, is suggesting that they use a technology they call blockchain. I don't know if that word means anything to you.
Yeah, I investigated that, yeah.
So it's a tracking system. Yeah. It's a sort of from a distance, so you can track who's got what, where and when. And if they want to basically be the warehousers, they could do it in that indirect fashion without actually having people put everything in the same physical location. Right. So this warehousing thing has gotten everybody a little bit confused. Nobody's really quite sure what they mean, and I'm not even sure if they're sure what they mean.
Yeah. Would they be the ones that are basically purchasing the cannabis for the province and then being distributors?
Something like that. So they would be purchasing from licensed producers, and then they would be purchasing from from sort of small licensed producers, and then they would be shipping things out according to what people ordered.
Yeah.
Much like money, it may not actually physically change hands, but the data does.
But the data changes hands, and there may be some, and maybe as warehouses they'll take a cut of some sort, I'm assuming.
Right. Right.
So if their main goal is simply to take a cut, and they're willing to go this indirect electronic route, that wouldn't be that bad. It would still mean that and even in the worst case scenario, the idea is that you would be able to order stuff from your favorite grower, presumably that grower has gotten a license. Because some people were worried that, it's going to break your relationship with your favorite grower. Well, not if that person applies for a license, they won't.
Yeah, so if that grower has a license, then their stuff is available on the menu. You place the order. The data goes through this one entity and gets distributed to whoever it is that the product that you're ordering from. So it actually comes from your favorite grower. The data is the only thing changing hands here. Your product is coming direct still.
Now, I know there are quite a number of people who are growing who were licensed under the MMAR system. They were licensed back in 2003 or 2001 or whatever, and they remain growers protected by an injunction. I'm not really quite sure what the deal is with them. I'm not sure whether they now have to come forward and be a different kind of licensed producer or whether they simply have to. I'm just not sure how that transition is going to take place.
Yeah, I think I've heard from a couple of people saying, well, what does that do to my MMAR? If I sign on with this, does that mean I'm giving up my MMAR now and I'm only licensed to this? Because if this becomes a failure, what happens to me in the end run?
Well, how would it become a failure?
Well, I don't know, but that's the speculation. People are very skeptical of government, Judith. You know that.
I do understand that. But the problem with the MMAR growers is they have never been given the right to sell to a dispensary.
Right.
Correct.
And so the licensed producers, if they're micro growers, will have a right to do that. So
Yeah.
it seems to me that it makes sense for them to apply for a license to grow.
The evolution of your license into the new being and the new entity, and it gives you more security in the long run.
I should think so. We have to make that transition somehow.
Right.
I guess maybe we should be asking John Conroy. He's the expert on this because he's the one that led the trial.
Right.
Because that
be the one
person
to ask.
The person doing the transition, they'd be becoming a business.
That's right. You're transitioning into a business.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, they are businesses now. They currently sell to dispensaries.
Right.
Correct.
That's what they do. And they currently sell to other people. So I would think that they would want to come forward if they could and get this new license.
Well, let's bring everybody under that legal umbrella that they had talked about.
I mean, it's not as if we're asking them to invest in stocks and the stocks might just drop in value. This is a real license given by a real government, you know.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they've done down in California, isn't it? They've invited the people, whether they had past charges or not, to get involved in order to help get the system up and running.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, they're doing great things with the people down there by not excluding the general public and the entities that got them to where they are today. In a lot of ways, California is surpassing what we're doing in Canada by leaps and bounds.
That's true enough, but you've got to remember California is one state, and this is an entire country.
Yeah.
With different regions and, very conservative areas and very liberal areas and everything in between. And every province has its own kind of culture and its own sort of prejudices. California is only just one state. It's much easier. I know it's as populous as Canada, but it's just one part of the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were legalizing in one province, we'd have an easier time than this. This is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Now, with the lounges, not the lounges, but with your policy out in British Columbia. Here in Ontario, there's discussion. They've asked for input on vapor lounges and stuff like that. Did the policy there for British Columbia touch on the lounges?
Yeah, vapor lounges will be allowed over here.
They will, eh?
Yeah, they will. Yeah, well, you need a place for people to consume, especially if they're going to stand up for landlords' rights. I have no idea how far they're going to go. Are they going to go no smoking in your apartment if you like smoking joints?
Well, yeah, that's what they want to do here in Ontario.
So I guess you'll have to go out on your balcony if you've got one.
Yeah.
Will they make the distinction between vaping and smoking? Because some people refuse to make that distinction.
Yeah.
Kathleen Wynne actually seems quite keen on vapor lounges, and she's even talking about having some hotels that will allow vaping in the hotel, hoping to whip up the tourist industry in Ontario.
Correct. And even the city of Niagara Falls is looking at getting involved in that because of the tourist end of things.
Yeah.
And it all makes sense to have the lounges. Now, obviously, there's going to be regulations and stuff that's going to be implemented, whether, they got to have ventilation and that in there. There's even some discussion about them further down the road being distributors of cannabis and edibles as well.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm in Northern Ontario, and where I am, we're 2 hours away from a border town as well. I'm fairly close to the Sault Ste. Marie bordering Michigan, so we get a lot of tourists come into the Timmins area as well. In all seasons, wintertime for the snowmobiling and the snowshoeing and the skiing, and in the summertime for the cottaging and the lakes and the fishing. So there's quite a bit of tourism here from the U.S. side as well. So I'm hoping that Northern Ontario communities take note of what they're doing in some of these larger tourist destinations like Niagara Falls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And I'm hoping that, that part of the industry, the tourist industry, will help to soften the attitude over a period of time, generally speaking. Because you can see across the country how much variation there is in how fearful people are. New Brunswick being probably the most fearful of all because they've talked about how they want all cannabis in the house kept under lock and key, like your guns.
Yeah.
So clearly their attitude is so very, very backward in that way. They seem to think cannabis is some sort of a dangerous explosive or something like that. I have no idea what they think.
Yeah. In Quebec, you're not allowed to grow your own.
In Quebec, they say you cannot grow your own, but I just don't see how they're going to be able to make that stick. If it's legal for Canadians to do that, unless they're going to announce that Quebec people are not Canadians, I just don't see how that would withstand any sort of a court challenge.
Yeah, because the province can't override federal law like that, can they?
Well, Quebec has always prided itself on being a special place with a special culture and special this and that. They've had lots of rules bent towards them for their preservation of the French language and so on and so forth. Some people have said that it's really too bad that Quebec didn't have a vibrant cannabis culture, or this would have been done a long time ago. Yeah. The legalization. Yeah. But it's right from the get-go. As soon as they got the medical program started there, it was the strictest in Canada. You have to go into a patient registry in order to get, to be able to buy from a licensed producer there. And so they've got the lowest participation for a licensed producer, patients all across Canada. Yeah. Because people don't want to go on a registry. I think if this gets challenged by a group of people, substantial group of people in Quebec, I'd be really surprised to see just how they could make that stick. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting for sure. Now, are they the only province?
Pardon?
Are they the
only? It's the only province that said that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, as far as I know, I'm trying to think of one of the.
I was thinking Alberta had said something about that at one time as well.
Alberta's unusual, and it's the only one that says that all of their stores are going to be private retail stores. There's going to be no public sales there at all. Now, that really surprised me.
Yeah. I think that's shocked everybody. They seem to be the most liberal when it comes to allowing current participation. I'm in a province that's so rigid on the situation, to do a 360 like that was very odd.
Well, when I've been talking to people about this, one of the things that people point out is, look, if you get a job at an LCB that sells cannabis, you're going to get paid $23 an hour. Yeah. There isn't any place else that you can work selling cannabis in a store that you're going to get that kind of money.
No. Yeah.
And so, in some ways, there's something good about that. So I'm kind of wondering if in Alberta they don't want to pay people $23 an hour, and they would rather they'd rather just have private stores that pay them $11 an hour, and maybe have them do half shifts or something like that. I don't know what's
think like an Albertan, right? You have to think about the almighty buck. You got to think Albertan.
Yeah.
Bring in the money on issuing licenses.
Because I'm wondering whether the money that's paid to employees at an LCB store are eventually going to have an influence on what gets paid across the board. Yeah. Because some dispensaries in my town pay $15 an hour, but lots of them don't. Yeah. Lots of them don't. Yeah. And if the industry as a whole is going to make money, then the people who are frontline people selling, they should get a good cut. Yeah. They should be well paid for what they do.
Well, they'll be covered under the labor laws and minimum wage, all that type of stuff.
I've heard local people complaining about the minimum wage, local dispensary owners saying, it's going to put me out of business. They act like every other business.
Well, it's a business, right? They all say that.
They all say that. But some of the cannabis dispensary people say it too, because they're also people.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. They've all got costs and overheads and stuff like that. Yeah. Things got to be paid out. So,
but that's a discussion for another show.
That's right. That's right. Ladies, we got less than a minute to break, so why don't we just go to break and we'll start anew on the other side.
Sounds good, Al.
All right. Okay, tonight our bumper music is Killing Time Band, and as our listeners know, I sort of line up the song with their guests Tonight the song is called Sheeple, which is a bit about politics and people. Then Kim and I will continue our talk with Professor Judith Stamps. This is the Pace Radio Show. We are live here at lifestyleradio.net.
Hey, this is Cheech.
And this is Chong.
And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
What is it?
Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time.
420 radio?
Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Come on, give it to me.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
A big thank you to our listeners. Because of you, you're listening to the award-winning Pace Radio Show here on Lifestyle Radio.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet. www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
CTCP now operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CTCP.
Man, have you been to Cannadays yet? Cannadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Cannadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Cannadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Cannadays. Have your say without saying a word. Cannadays.ca.
You're only crazy. You're only crazy if you listen. You're only crazy. You're only crazy if you listen. And you know,
Hey, we're back, and we are the Pace Radio Show, and we are broadcasting live here at lifestyleradio.net. We're also live at Spreaker, Shoutcast, TuneIn Radio. Plus, you can catch us live even at the Pace Radio website. Just a quick reminder and a plug for the Reefer Reporters, a new cannabis news podcast here on Lifestyle Radio. Right, Kim?
Yes, sir.
And they come out, the podcast is released every Monday at about 4:20, and they are available all week, and they cover the previous week's news all on cannabis, and we cover not just Canada, but also international news as well, right, Kim?
Yep, we're all over the place checking out stories and dissecting them all the way through as we go.
That's right. Yeah, it's not just about the article itself that we're on. It's we have our own opinions, and we discuss each of our news articles. We get to about 10 on there.
Yeah, about 10 every week, and we talk, try and get in depth with them as much as we can, and discuss issues from several sides.
That's right, exactly. Okay, tonight on the Pace Radio Show, we are joined by our guest, Professor Judith Stamps, who teaches at the University of Victoria. And Kim, that last segment, we just jumped right into the news there in British Columbia and their plans on legalization. And I'm sure you didn't get to do your intro.
No, I didn't. But, that's how easy it is to talk to Professor Stamps. Judith is fantastic. The last time we had her on the show was way back when, January the 18th, way back in 2016. So it's been just over 2 years since she was on with us on Pace. For those that don't know who Judith is, perhaps, Judith is a professor at the University of Victoria, and she's heading up a course that's going to be taking place at UVic this year called The Politics and Science of Cannabis Sativa, aka marijuana. Now, Judith, you started off way back when. You're involved with Ted Smith with Hempology 101. You're a part of Cannabis Digest. You've taken part in the proceedings and the things going on at the Ted's shop. I've lost for words there. Al, what's they called? We just had them on last week.
The Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club.
Thank you, Judith. The VCBC. See what medicating too much during the break does to your brain. Okay, so yeah, the VCBC. Judith, you're all over the map, and now you're rescuing me live on the air. I am so glad that you were able to join us on the show tonight after such a long time away.
Okay, well, just a correction. I'm not teaching at UVic right now because I'm basically retired.
Okay.
But I did approach continuing studies, which is a part of the university that teaches non-credit courses. They seem to have a number of people who do that to see if they would be interested in running a course of this kind. And so after a very long time, they said they would be willing to run it, and it will remain to be seen between now and April whether enough people sign up for the course to run. But in the meanwhile, I'm working on it, and I hope to be able to teach it.
Awesome. Fantastic. So you are a retired professor. My mistake on that. I didn't realize you were already retired. Awesome,
yeah, I'm an old person. I'm ancient.
Aren't we all?
If we don't look it, we can feel it.
That's right.
But this is fantastic that the university actually said yes to doing this.
It is fantastic because when I first met the coordinator, she said, well, I'm willing to experiment, but I really can't tell you. And she told me all the different people she'd have to run it by, after which I thought, nah, that's never going to work. But apparently the dean signed off on it, so that's progress on its own.
For sure.
Yep, and I'm hoping to. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm basically working on. There are 6 classes in a row, 2 hours each. I will have 2 speakers. One of them is Kirk Tusaw, with whom I'm sure you're all familiar.
Yes.
He's going to come and talk on some of the legal things because I'm thinking maybe there might be a student who's got more legal knowledge than I do. Because I'm going to be working with adults. And he could answer some of the fine points. And I've also got Dr. David Hepburn, who's one of the few doctors in Canada that's licensed by Health Canada to educate other doctors about cannabis medicine. And he happily lives in Victoria, BC. So he's also agreed to come for one session, because that's another area where my knowledge has certain limits. I actually have been reading a lot about the effect of cannabinoids on the brain, but it's very slow reading for me because I'm not a microbiologist.
Right.
But I have made some strides in understanding it. I just wouldn't want to lecture on that subject.
Right. Yeah. Well, we all have our expertise, right? And we bring in the ones that know best and are going to be able to pass the correct knowledge on. Fantastic that you were able to get these people together.
Yeah. Well, they were actually very, very amenable. They seemed quite happy to. I mean, both Kirk and David Hepburn are very generous with their time, I find.
Awesome.
Very generous with their time in the community. Like they like the opportunity to address the public on something. They also have taken quite a lot of responsibility for public education. Both of them have. So my goal will be to try to get the students in the first place to get some sense of the industry as it exists today before legalization. I want them to understand what the underground industry looks like, who are the participants, what are the different jobs that people do. I want them to understand that there are insurers and brokers and growers and, that this is a very fully fledged industry full of good people.
Yeah, it's not just about the person at the corner store selling you a bag of weed. This is an actual industry that's worth billions of dollars. That's
right. And I also hope to get across the idea that the distinction that the current government is making between medical and cannabis, saying, well, we're going to leave the medical alone, we're just going to, license the recreational, that distinction doesn't work very well. It doesn't work very well because they never did get the medical right. And now that they're going to do the recreational, they're making things harder for the patients still.
Okay, yeah. Do you think, that was going to be one of my questions, is do you think that there's going to be issues for the medical cannabis community? Obviously, you think there will be.
Well, the issues for the medical community are this. There are a lot of people where there are dispensaries, there are a lot of people who've been visiting those dispensaries and getting a variety of things that include concentrates, tinctures, edibles, topical things, salves, and so on and so forth, none of which licensed producers sell, none of which they've ever sold because they haven't been given the right to do those things. And so you've got people who've been going, let's say, to VCBC or someplace in Toronto like Cannabis is Living Medicine, both of which opened in 1996. So you've got people who've been going there for 20 years, depending on this kind of medication. And if they now shut down that supply by saying, well, now that you're in the federal system, you can only sell what the feds say you can sell. You can sell dried flowers and a very dilute form of oil, and that's all you can sell.
Right. And that's
what are
not
those people supposed to do?
Yeah.
Where are they supposed to go?
Yeah. Well,
where are the patients in Toronto supposed to go if they shut down all their dispensaries?
That's a big issue. I mean, dispensaries to me started to fill the void to give patients medicine. All you're effectively doing is taking that medicine away now.
Yep. Taking the medicine away and distressing a lot of people. So, yes, I think it's going to impact the patients very deeply because signing on to a licensed producer isn't all that easy. Many people can't get the doctor's note that they need, or they can't pay the prescription mills that sell prescriptions for money, the fees that they require.
Yeah. And then there's the problem with the prices of the LPs themselves. Some words, most are $10 and up, and they only sell by the gram, and they only sell dry flower. So then you've got to pay exorbitant prices for, say, 28 grams a full ounce of your normal medicine in order to produce 1/4 ounce of your concentrated tincture that you now have to produce on your own.
Yep, that's right. And there are just too many people who don't have the physical capacity to do that. They've got arthritic hands. They can't move around very well. There's no way they could get through a baking procedure or a tincture procedure. They just don't have the dexterity to be able to do that. And some people don't have the energy to do it.
No.
So, yes, I think it's going to hurt patients a lot, and I'm surprised and disappointed that the federal government just, I don't know, I guess it's just that they don't think cannabis is really a medicine. And I imagine that they thought, well, if we just legalize it recreationally, the medical problem will just go away by itself, because then everybody can just go to a store and buy whatever they want.
Yeah.
Without realizing that there are some products that people rely on that those stores are never going to have.
Well, look at the when they did the Project Claudia raids in Toronto, shutting down a lot of the dispensaries and going out at them because of the food products and the tinctures and the creams and stuff. It ended up starting a whole new, I guess you could call, different market, because they ended up with those pop-up markets, the green markets.
That's right.
And that's what they were all about.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. They were. And so you're gonna end up getting things like that in Ontario. In BC, I imagine that at least VCBC and the Vancouver Island Compassion Society and any other dispensary that keeps records for each patient, either a proof of condition or something of that sort, they may simply be allowed to operate as they always have. I think because local authorities will probably just look the other way.
Yeah,
I certainly hope so.
Well, no, I mean, the way
it would be nice for them to have, and for others to have, some sort of assurances or, or mandate to allow for patient-oriented shops to become a separate entity from, say, non-medicinal shops.
Right. And so I think there are a couple of shops in this town that will definitely distinguish themselves as medicinal shops, and possibly others as well, if only because it allows them to sell a much wider range of things for the patients that come there. I have a lot of hope for this particular area. I know for a fact that the dispensaries here are not supposed to have edibles, and most of them don't, but the strictly medical ones actually do. And I think the bylaw officer simply said to one of them, well, just don't have them around when I come here. Put them out of sight. Bring them back out when I leave. I mean, they're doing the best they can. They're doing the best they can.
Right. People are being human and trying to work with what they've got.
Yeah, they're being human. But I feel for the patients in Toronto and the larger areas in Ontario that have had dispensaries. I just can't see how that's going to work.
Will there be any conflict between those bylaws and that they run under with Vancouver and Victoria and what the provincial government is looking at doing?
Well, that's a good question. They have basically said that they're going to leave it to the municipalities to license the shops, which aren't allowed to call themselves dispensaries anymore, by the way.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's now a list of things you're not allowed to call yourself. You can't be an apothecary or a medical thing or a dispensary, because they think dispensary now has come to mean medical. So if you're selling recreationally, you're not allowed to call yourself a dispensary anymore. But that doesn't matter. You can just call yourself anything you want. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. But I don't know whether the shops that have been licensed have to get themselves relicensed or not. Perhaps not. It doesn't make any sense because the licensing,
there's sources as well, right? There's suppliers.
There are sources?
They're suppliers to the dispensaries. Would they all of a sudden now have to be switched over to the LP style thing, or would they have to? Would their suppliers have to become licensed?
Well, here's what happens. So let's say day one of legalization is August the 1st. August the 1st, if I understand how slow the feds are in licensing growers, August the 1st, theoretically speaking, there'll be no legal supply in any dispensary at all, because the dispensaries don't get their stuff from licensed producers, as we understand them now. They get their stuff from MMAR growers or other growers.
Right.
So what's going to happen on day one? I don't know. It's going to be really very weird. In some parts of Canada that are quite liberal, like this one, they may say, okay, well, just carry on as you are, as long as you're applying for a license to grow, and other places will not allow it. which means that their dispensaries won't have any legal supply to sell you.
Yeah.
And now the feds are saying distribution could take anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks after the official signing of the documentation.
Yeah, well, that doesn't bother me too much because once it starts, it starts. I mean, the Trudeau government, I have to say on their behalf, they have met every single deadline that they promised. But they don't have control over the Senate, so they can't tell them what to do. They can't say, hurry up and crack the whip in any way. And they don't have a control about what Health Canada is going to do. They can't crack the whip there either.
No.
Right.
But this is going to happen.
Oh, I think it's going to happen. I know there are people out there that are skeptical. There are people out there that have a really negative outlook on it. That, there's that term out there, Prohibition 2.0.
Well, you know where that comes from.
This is going to happen, but what exactly is this, quote unquote? What is this? Well, that's the big question, right? What will it look like?
Well, okay, the only reason I would be willing to call it Prohibition 2.0 is because of the fact that they are still using the strongest arm of the law to punish people who are working outside of the framework.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you give a can of beer to a 17-year-old, somebody will slap you on the wrist and tell you not to do it again. And if you're doing it from a store, you might lose your license. But if you do that with cannabis, there's a maximum of 14 years in prison.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's why people are calling it Prohibition, 2.0,
Yeah.
because it still uses the criminal law to punish offenders, which makes everybody still seem like a criminal somehow.
Yeah, you're still being, if you're giving that beer to somebody, to a minor, you can still be punished for it, but the severity of the punishment obviously is huge.
Yeah, it's very huge.
Yeah.
And
a fine compared to 14 years in jail.
And the other thing that I think makes it prohibition-like is that they have created this sort of imaginary creature, which Bill Blair calls, and Trudeau has repeated, this person in a stairwell selling cannabis to little kiddies.
Yeah.
That's why they have the 14 years. But the person in the stairwell is a bogeyman. That person doesn't exist.
No.
Who really exists is the 19-year-old who's sharing his joint with his 17-year-old girlfriend. That's who you're going to catch.
Yeah.
That's right.
So they either don't understand that, or to the extent that they do understand it, they don't care. I can't tell. But that's, if there's any reason to call it Prohibition 2.0, that would be the reason. They're still creating scare tactics, to have huge punishments.
Yeah. Which is no good. It's now that 14 years. No, that's not a mandatory minimum style sentence, I imagine.
No, it's not mandatory minimum, but you could get up to that.
You could.
I just don't imagine who they think they're going to catch.
Yeah.
Because so far as I know, there aren't a lot of adults around trying to entice the kiddies. That's not how this industry works.
No,
exactly.
That's not what we've ever been about.
Some of the talk you hear from some of the politicians, it makes it sound as if the kids are part of being legal, and whereas they're not. We're not. It's not being sold to them by the businesses and stores.
Well, no, but I mean, they say that liquor stores, for example, are really good places to sell cannabis because they've got lots of experience with a controlled substance, and they've got lots of experience with ID. But kids get a hold of alcohol every weekend of every week of every decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't do it by going to a liquor store.
Yeah.
They just get it from their friend who's just a little bit older.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
Then we took it to the school dance.
Yeah. I mean, if the kids want it, they're going to get it. That's all there is to it. The kids are ingenious these days, especially. Liquor stores, being the only ones capable of supplying this need. That thought to me is preposterous. We have venues across the country that serve alcohol by the glass every day, and they ask for ID, and they're quite capable of running their establishments, whether it's a bar or an amusement park outlet. There's booze everywhere, and people are carded.
We get licenses or certificates for people so they can sell booze at a local wedding. The Smart Serve program.
That's right. Yeah.
You know?
Yes. So that whole point of view to me is just ludicrous.
Right, but that's where we are now, and I don't know whether it's because that's really Trudeau's mentality, or whether it's because he thought this is the only way he could sell it across Canada, given the variations in attitude.
I tend to lean towards the latter.
Yeah, a little bit at a time, maybe a little bit of a easier pill to swallow for the masses at the moment and chip away at it as we go. Some say that is the course that we're on right now. So let's hope that that's the case.
Because we have to at least, be a little bit charitable. He's got to stare down, the conservative opposition who would never have done this in a million years. And he's got to stare down those countries in the United Nations that are still beheading people or putting them in prison for life. Mm-hmm. And so the way he's doing it is he's saying, well, Canada has a right to protect its children, and that's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Now that's, from the UN perspective, that's a really watertight argument.
Really? Yeah. How can you stop a country from doing that?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, especially, because we did have, we were leading the industrial world, developed world in youth consumption. And
but that's not really true,
It's not,
It was his argument, and it's not true. It's a fallacy, is it? Tell us more, Judith.
That figure comes from a 2009 United Nations report, the World Health Organization. And if you read their report, that figure for Canada, they collated a whole lot of figures they got from different countries, but that figure from Canada they got from an older report that goes before 2009, 2003 or 4 or something like that. So first of all, the data is very old.
Okay.
It's not up to date. Second of all, Ontario did a youth participation study across the province of Ontario just a couple of years ago, and they determined that the percentage was something like 17%, rather than what they were saying, 29% is what they were saying. So, and even the drug counselors in Canada, when they heard those figures, said, 30%, that doesn't sound right to me. It's like 1 in 3 kids. No, that's not right. It's not right. No. The other thing they pointed out about that, the other thing that was pointed out about the study is that it depended on kids basically coming forward and admitting that they were using cannabis. Let's say if they were 15.
Right.
And they did that for kids in lots of different countries. But in some countries, it would be more dangerous to come forward than it would be in other countries.
Right.
So perhaps kids in Canada were more willing to come forward, and perhaps kids in for example, Sweden, which is extremely anti-cannabis and hardly anybody ever uses it, would be very reluctant to come forward.
Yes.
So that skews the final result.
Absolutely.
How safe do the kids feel telling the truth? So we've got very old data that contrasts with the newer data that we've gotten from the Ontario study, and we've got this disparity between how comfortable the kids are talking about what they're doing in different countries. So I don't pay much attention to that so-called 29% or whatever it is participation. I don't think that's accurate.
Well,
there you go.
Yeah, can't argue with you there.
But I still think that it's his best selling point to sell it across the country, especially to people who hate the whole idea and would do anything to stop it. But if you say, but it's for the kids, they'll go, okay.
Yeah,
and I think
agree.
that's really...
It's a great selling point, and it's ironic that they required that data, and poof, look, there it was.
Yeah, well, something else it said in that report, however, which they completely ignored. This was the Harper government that first brought this out. they said that harsh punishments are really the wrong way to go. It said in the same report.
Yeah.
You should not resort to harsh punishments. That only makes things worse. However, they didn't read that part of the report.
Yes. That was omitted.
Well, we have to direct that to Mr. Trudeau then, too.
Yes.
For those 14 years.
14 years. I can't imagine who they think they're going to catch in that trap.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it must be where they think they're getting somebody who's forcing teenagers to transport cannabis.
But if it's legal,
amounts.
But if it's legal,
Yeah.
who needs to do that? Nobody
I don't
needs to do that if it's legal.
Yeah.
No, I think it's because in the first place in the task force, they didn't actually bring any frontline people. They didn't bring in any people who actually knew how the industry functioned.
Yeah.
And so there was a huge level of ignorance there, which there still is.
Yeah.
And a certain amount of just willful blindness there. So unfortunately, they're just going to have to bump into brick walls until they get it right.
Yes, and unfortunately, it'll probably be the courts who has been our champion all the way along, or most of the way along. And
I'm guessing we
take
will
them
have a
through
number of
things.
court cases.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, ladies, it's break time again. Time for us to do some
goody,
more
break
commercials. Yes. Okay, and our listeners are going to hear some more of the Killing Time Band and their song Sheeple. And then when we return, Kim and I will continue our conversation with Professor Judith Stamps. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show here at lifestyleradio.net and .ca.
Please hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
They nightmares, what's left of my security when I'm covered in gray hairs? Walks off with a big stick, keep power for the people. When they popping off in parliament, it's poised with no equal. Turn latent words to truth by doing and not talking. Cause all they doing is talking to get that bullshit to walking. Told it a good for, now words is a weapon. If it's down for a march, 99% stepping, y'all. Turning the sheep with a back away from the herd. Cause you ain't thinking for yourself yet, that's just absurd. Crazy.
Man, have you been to Cannadays yet? Cannadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Cannadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Cannadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Cannadays. Have your say without saying a word. Cannadays.ca.
Hi, this is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on lifestyleradio.ca.
This is Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper. Catch me every Monday at 4:20 on The Reefer Reporters, aired on lifestyleradio.net. Available for replay or download on Lifestyle Radio or Spreaker.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Love is better than anger. Hope is better than fear. Optimism is better than despair. So let us be loving, hopeful.
Hey, we're back. Thanks for tuning into the program, everybody. Just to remind you, if you don't catch our live podcast here every Wednesday night, you can catch the recorded or the audio of the live version at YouTube, Mixcloud, iTunes, as well as iHeartRadio if you're in the USA. Tonight's bumper music was by the Killing Time Band, and you got to hear the song Sheeple. If you enjoyed tonight's music and you want to hear more of it, then I suggest that you go to the Killing Time Band's website at killingtimeband.com, or you can search for them on YouTube. Tonight on the program, we got our guest, editor of Cannabis Digest, Professor Judith Stamps, which we're going to talk about here shortly, and my joint host, Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper. Okay, ladies, we're into the last segment of the program. I just mentioned Cannabis Digest. We've been talking about legalization in British Columbia, as well as Judith's course, Politics and Science of Cannabis Sativa. So, ladies, where should we go? Cannabis Digest?
Yeah, I think we're going to go on to Cannabis Digest. Just before we get into that, just a reminder, get in touch with continuing studies at the University of Victoria and grab a spot for Judith's upcoming lectures on cannabis and the politics and science of cannabis sativa. It'll be happening April the 4th to May 19th on Wednesdays. You can sign up at the UVic campus website. So check that out before your time runs out for registration. From there, Cannabis Digest. Judith, you've been part of Cannabis Digest for quite some time, editing and writing and running the magazine for a while now. And I've had a few bundles delivered to my place for NOS or for distribution in the north. We just love it up here.
Yeah, Cannabis Digest is sort of in a hiatus right now. It's now kind of under the direction of Owen Smith, and he's currently working with some other people to kind of restart it. But I don't know that it's ever going to be producing a paper edition. I think it's going to be mostly an online thing in the future. It's in a period of transition because it was published by Hempology 101, but that's disbanded.
Right.
So Ted walked away from a lot of stuff at some point, and he's now back to running the VCBC, but he doesn't have the energy to try to run something like Hempology. He's doing Gale's teas and, getting involved with more local stuff. And so Owen there's no more Hempology 101, and Owen has taken over trying to do something with the paper, but that's got to be done on a slightly more commercial basis. Before that, we basically had a volunteer organization. So I wrote blogs, but we didn't pay writers. So we just got anybody who was willing to, volunteer their time. As we go forward, that's not really going to be possible. There are there's so many blogs out there, and blog groups like Lyft and so on all pay their people. And it's just, you can't run something like that in perpetuity with volunteer labor, especially since the volunteers were basically Owen, Ted, and me.
Right.
And, and a few other people.
It's a huge undertaking to get something like that out. I mean, I enjoyed the magazine immensely. I looked forward to coloring the front page and distributing it in Northern Ontario. It was fantastic. I'm sad to see it go, but I completely understand. It's an enormous undertaking for a small group.
Yeah, and even the distribution was something else. So I'm not sure, but I don't think there'll be a paper edition. But I'm hoping that Owen's hoping that by March we'll have the new one up and running, as an online thing. And they're hoping to be able to, get enough ads on it to keep it going, and also to be able to pay writers.
Excellent. Well, I'll
Something.
enjoy reading it, the online. I mean, it's the evolution of things today. Print and paper is, the way of the dinosaurs, Judith, I'm afraid. Today's world, it is all online.
It is, although I'm old-fashioned. I always order things, that I read in paper edition or print them out or something. I don't know about you, but I find reading on the screen a bit tiring.
Yes. I agree. I enjoy the paper editions as well. I'm going to miss it for sure, but it seems that's the way that many are going.
Yeah, that's right. It's very difficult, and even the mainstream papers are either reducing the number of days that they publish or reducing the size of the paper or something, because it's really hard for them to make ends meet.
Yeah.
Because there's so much competition out there. I mean, the sheer number of cannabis bloggers out there just blows me away. There's so many different sites for which people write blogs in cannabis. There's weed blogs
But there's a lot of people like yourself, like you mentioned, that likes to actually hold something physically and read it.
Yep.
And I found that, I've got old copies of Treating Yourself magazine here that I'm still giving away because people enjoy sitting down and reading, curl up on the couch.
Yes.
Sure, you could do that with your tablet, but to actually hold the newspaper it's different.
The screen gets hard on the eyes. The brightness.
It does. It uses up your data plan too.
No, right. It is hard on the eyes. It is.
Yeah, it is. It is. I agree. So hey, that's great. I didn't realize that with Cannabis Digest. And I know the Pace Radio Show, we ran an ad in there for a long time, and we distributed. They sent me 2 bundles, and I distributed them around. Every time they sent them.
Yeah, so we've disbanded Hempology. It did its job over the years, and hopefully we'll see Cannabis Digest emerge as a new entity with some new people running it in a short order.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing Ted always made sure, he always corrected me on it. He always said it's not a magazine, it's a newspaper.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, that's right. It's a newspaper.
Yeah. And that's why in the promo for the show I called it Canada's longest or oldest cannabis newspaper.
Newspaper. It's also the only newspaper, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, I know.
There you go. Cannabis Digest, you guys carried stories from a lot of writers from all over the place on a lot of different topics over the years, that's for sure. One topic that was covered every year for sure was our annual 420s that are held across the country.
That's
every
right.
year.
Every year.
We were talking about the evolution, I guess, of Cannabis Digest, and that kind of leads into 420. And is it taking an evolutionary turn right now? With legalization coming in Canada, what does that mean for 420 in the future? Many are asking this. What are your thoughts on that, Judith?
I think the upcoming 420 will just be a normal 420 because we haven't legalized yet, and so we're still kind of going to be hanging there waiting for something to happen, hopefully in July or August or something like that. But thereafter, it's going to be an annual celebration of the history of cannabis legalization. I should think that it will be a celebration of all the hard work that people have done ever since the 1960s. The first legalization organization emerged in 1964 in San Francisco and also in New York, but very soon was brought to Canada, by 1967. So that movement preceded the medical movement by a decade or so. So people have been at it for a long, long time, and some people are still alive who went to those original meetings. So it would be a celebration of all of our hard work.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. It turns into a celebration. And, during the time of that celebration, I think legalization itself is undergoing an evolution, so to speak, and, will evolve over time. I've said this in the past, no first draft of any document is ever perfect. It will take some evolving over time to get the kinks out and to get it right, such as we discussed the 14-year term for passing a joint to a minor. These things will all be addressed, of course, through the courts. So as well as the celebration, I think it's also a continued fight for different elements within the cause.
So what elements are you thinking about?
Well, fighting for, to get rid of the 14-year term. That's still an ongoing
improvements.
Fight. Improvements on the law.
Yeah. And so one of the improvements I would like to see is I would like the provinces to be able to get a little bit more control over production in their own province. I would like to see provincial production licenses.
Should they not be able to go across provincial borders, supply across borders? Isn't there
that's a different issue. That issue is actually before the courts right now because there was in Ontario a man who was bringing liquor from Ontario into another province. And was stopped. And so that's in the courts right now, and Cannabis Culture is an intervener in that court case. But basically they're saying that there should be free trade across the provinces, and I agree with that.
So, evolution of 420 can be a continued fight to evolve the cannabis laws in this country to encompass more rights as we go along.
Yeah, more rights for patients, maybe try to bring a little bit more public awareness of what the problem is for patients, because the way the Trudeau people are presenting it, well, you mustn't give people money, you mustn't give these people money because you're just paying for gangs. I mean, it's just such bad public education, if you want to call it that, indoctrination, that we, it will be our job to try to use those events to try to publicize something a little truer, something a bit more accurate. I think it would be a great, especially since they attract media attention, it's just an ideal time if you have a theme in mind for a particular 420. Let's say this year we're going to tackle this part of the law. There's your publicization right there.
Right. One element at a time. Everybody get on board.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because the one thing I saw online, somebody mentioned, it's more about civil disobedience, so on and so forth. But it's going to evolve. Like you say, it's going to be a celebration of, the past challenges from the 60s and on. So there's basically almost 60 years of protesting, and getting close many times or a few times, and hopefully now there's no. It goes through.
There's no way that it can't go through at this point because there's too many people who've been invited by the federal government to invest all their time and energy and money into this. As you probably have heard, a number of the licensed producers have now bought, an extra 1 million square feet on which they plan to grow. I don't know how many plants you can grow in 1 million square feet. Lots, I imagine. And so to invite people to invest like that and say, "Oh, we're not going to legalize after all," you just can't do that.
No, it's
no
not
turning back now, eh?
No,
no, this ship has sailed.
It's going to happen no matter what. Yeah, it's going to happen no matter what.
And now the next thing is to work on improvements.
Right.
And so the next thing is to get together and think, well, what's the worst part of the system that we really need to get rid of first? And we'll have to wait until we see how it impacts people. Are the patients are the ones are going to be suffering first? Is someone actually ever going to be facing a 14-year sentence? I have no idea.
Yeah. And the thing I wondered about too is like right now the people who are who are applying to become licensed producers, they're applying under a medical program, but you're hearing a lot of the promo about the recreational end or when they transition from medical to sound recreational. Is it
the new micro licenses are for recreational.
Just recreational, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's not to say that you can't grow something that you think is medicinal, but they're basically recreational licenses.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was wondering. Is it just Is it just the medical license?
No, they're only being brought in for the rec market. So patients that are ordering from legal producers won't have access to that menu unless you order off the rec menu.
Yeah.
If the menus are going to be different. I sometimes wonder what the licensed producers are going to have left, though, because they've made contracts with Ontario, with New Brunswick, with I think many of the two of the other prairie provinces. I can't remember the names of all of the provinces, and they've signed a memorandum of understanding with a huge pharmacy chain.
Yeah.
And they also have a lot of investments in selling overseas.
Yes.
Are they going to have enough supply for the patients?
No, they're not. I can tell you right now, I know of 3 licensed producers that have signed these said contracts with different provinces, and those companies in particular currently don't have a proper supply for current patients that they have. There's shortages, outages, limits, all kinds of stuff going on.
Yep.
So how are they going to supply the rec market once legalization come if they can't do patients now? And that leads me to think, well, are they cutting back on patient supply that's available so they can stockpile for the rec market?
Well, I would be doing that if I were them, because if you sign a contract with the province of Ontario, you can't not. I mean, if you're dealing with one patient, you can say to the patient, "I'm sorry, I'm out of Baba Kush. We don't have any anymore." You can't say that to the province of Ontario.
That's right. So, patients are already suffering. They're already at risk. We're already feeling the effects of legalization with shortages and outages for patients that are registered with these companies. It's happening now.
And one of the things that the licensed producers have been doing these many years, because it's been tough for them to try to make a living because not enough Canadians were really signing up with them, they really have focused their attention on international sales. They now sell to 10 different countries.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow,
and
really,
then so they sell to 10 different countries, including Germany and some Australia and New Zealand, and I can't rattle them all off, but there are 10 of them. And in addition to that, 2 of the companies, Canopy and Aurora, have established growing a place to grow. So Tilray, I think, is it Tilray? Yeah, Tilray is now growing in another place. They're growing I think in Portugal or someplace like that. Canopy Growth, I think, has established a grow in Denmark.
Yeah.
So they're basically building a garden over there.
International. Anywhere
they become
but the
international.
US.
Anywhere but the U.S. So they're really in the international market. So between the international market, Shoppers Drug Mart, and all of the provinces, I just really don't see how the patients are going to be. They're certainly not going to put them first. I don't expect them to anyway.
Well, no, and it's never, and it's already, like I said, it's already happening. Patients are already feeling repercussions from this. It's being reported across the board from several different companies, and then to top it all off, they're getting government grants to build.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. And it's been a long-standing problem with licensed producers that people have complained that their favorite stuff, they run out of it all the time. They say, "I'm sorry, I don't know when we're going to have it again." And so, that's just gotten worse, but it's always been there. Yeah. And then to top it all off, people who are trying to grow their plants medically through the ACMPR some of them have said they've been waiting 7 months to get their form okayed, and they're still not hearing anything.
Yeah, I have 3 clients. One of them is at an 18-week wait one, and then the other one is at 14 weeks.
That's ridiculous. Like, society would never accept that to go into a drugstore and pick up a prescription drugs. So how is that acceptable for a patient under the cannabis thing to wait that long? It's ridiculous.
No, it is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's current wait time.
Current,
yeah.
Right?
Yep. And the way they do that is they just don't hire enough people to process the people that need processing. I mean, you can create a bottleneck very easily by just not hiring enough staff to deal with all the incoming applications.
Just
and so I'm a little bit worried about that with, micro-licensed producers. How fast are they going to be able to process these?
Well, unless they've got different staff than they're using for patients, then
they've gotten better with licensed producers. I mean, since when Trudeau came in, there was something like 24 licensed producers, and now there's over 88. They really have expedited it. They have.
Yeah, but not all of those are in production either.
I think you have to. They're not on. They're certainly not all in full production. No.
Yeah.
No,
not all of them have available.
They're not going to have a warehouse stock full come July the 1st. Let's put it that way. Anybody?
They don't have available product yet. Well, a lot of them. But there's only a small percentage that have available product, especially
of the new ones.
Patients.
You mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, looking at the scene out there, I worry about patients even signing on to the LPs. I have this feeling in my mind that I think the federal government might have thought, well, if we just bring in the recreational, we don't have to worry about the medical because this is going to look after it.
Yeah.
And everybody can just get it, and it won't even be an issue. I think that's what they must have been thinking.
I've expressed this fear to many, Judith. It's not uncommon for me to say this on a regular basis, that I think in theory that's what they're looking to do in the future, is to eliminate the medical market by saying, well, look, it's available everywhere. You can get it at the local store, the same as aspirin. You don't need a prescription for it anymore. We're getting rid of med.
I'm a little bit concerned about that too, and that's just because Health Canada's position still is that cannabis is not an approved medicine.
Well, and the government just threw excise tax on it on top of
that, which obviously then it's not a medicine to them, or they wouldn't have, put that tax on it.
Oh, somebody might try to cheat the system.
So there still is this big denial that there's anything medical about cannabis at the federal level.
Yep.
And what's going to turn that around, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
So I think they probably thought they were just going to stamp this whole thing out. Let's just legalize the whole thing.
And everybody will just be quiet and go away.
Everybody will just be quiet and go away.
Yeah, because they have to have a medical program or it's got to be legalized. It was like the way the court system worked back on the Parker case. Yeah.
They said you can't have prohibition unless there's a proper constitutionally viable exemption of some kind. You've got to make it available to people.
Yeah, and look how many times they've been before the courts fighting constitutionality over the medical program over the years.
Dozens of times.
Dozens of times.
There have been 5 main court cases, but there have been dozens of little ones.
And people even say now, even the present program doesn't meet it, because then they would have lifted the injunction if it was constitutional.
That's right. So and it's going to go back. We're not done. That's for sure.
No. Okay, ladies. We are at the shout-out portion of the program.
Awesome.
Time to promote, highlight, website, person, place, thing, something along that line, Judith, that you want to mention?
No. I'm just really happy to have been on the show. I'm happy to have talked to you guys.
Okay. I was going to say, if you want to give everybody your website to the course you're offering here through continuing studies, but I see it's an awful long website.
Yeah, it's a long name. But if you look at continuing studies at UVic, you'll get directed to that place.
Okay, continuingstudies.uvic.ca is the website.
Right. That's all you need to know.
Okay, good.
And we will have the link also on our website, of course,
great.
attached to the show.
Yeah, and I included it in the promo of the show as well. I included that link to it, so it would be out there for people to see. Okay, Kim?
Tonight, my shout out, I guess, is going to go to Sam. Sam, my friend, get well. I hope my spirit is with you. I wish I could be with you in person, but I am with you from across the miles. You're in everybody's thoughts and prayers. Please get well soon. We love you, Sam.
Yeah, and reminder that anybody who knows Sam really closely, get a hold of somebody in the family to get up and see him. Any help would be appreciated, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm working steadfastly on trying to get some contact people for people to reach out to find out how to go about seeing Sam. And I know visitors that he knows fairly well and would be able to recognize are most welcome at this time. But we don't want a whole bunch of people there all at once. So we're trying to organize something. So stay tuned for posts on that.
That's good. That's good. Okay, everybody. I will be back next week with my joint host, Alicia, and her special guest. And you can catch the Pace Radio Show on Facebook. We're on Twitter at Pace Radio. We're on Instagram as Pace Radio Show. We're online on the web as pace-online.ca. So we are out there. Thank yous as always. Go to our sponsors, the friendly folks and very helpful folks at CC Nexus. They're Canada's cannabis seed wholesaler. They are found at ccnexus.global. Always to our producer, Al Rapp, here at Lifestyle Radio. A huge thank you to our guest, Professor Judith Stamps. Thank you once again, Judith, for coming on the program. We really appreciate you coming and talking to our listeners. And we'll make sure that we get you back again sooner than the 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have you back for show number 200. No.
Well, I have a feeling that a lot more is going to be going on in the next few months than has gone on for a long time.
Yes. Absolutely. We'll have to have you back for a catch-up.
That's okay. For sure. All right. And thank you to you, Kim, for everything you do to the program. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
and Al. You're welcome. And a big thank you to the listeners. Thank you for tuning into the program. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
So what are you doing?
Okay.
Nothing? Why not? Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website. Sounds like a cool website. Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it. You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.